A very good evening to all our viewers, and welcome to yet another edition of The Agenda. Thank you for joining us again this Sunday. I am very excited tonight because we continue to elevate the conversation as far as the subject of COVID-19 is concerned. Of course, to a lot of people, it has become a fatigue topic, if I can call it that way, because every other platform gives information only about COVID-19. But I think for our show, we elevate the conversation to give more information, and that is why tonight we have on the show Dr. Panduleni Itula. He is president of the Independent Patriots for Change, but more in the context of this conversation, he is a medical practitioner, he's a dentist, and also a practitioner in other areas of health. Welcome to the show, Dr. Itula. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Namibia. I'm absolutely delighted to be here under the circumstances.
Wonderful. Also on the show tonight is Dr. Tshali Ithete. He is also a renowned medical practitioner up north, who is also the managing director of the Ongwediva MediPark hospital, one of the biggest in the north. Dr. Ithete, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jabela, and I'm really glad to be here.
Wonderful. We'll start with you, Dr. Itula. You have made some interventions in recent days, recommending certain remedies. There's a concoction that you have put together in some flyers that we've seen. Tell us about that. What is it, and what kind of relief can it bring to people suffering from COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you very much, and good evening, Namibia. We are absolutely in a very difficult time, and it's a difficult period for Namibia, not only Namibia, but the world at large. We have lost quite some of our leaders, especially our traditional leaders, and in IPC we have lost some of our formidable Councillor Lian Liebenberg, and also someone who was responsible for the religious affairs of IPC, Pastor John Sean, and as a consequence of that, we are not in a situation we would say otherwise being happy. In addition to being a dentist, which is what the whole of Namibia think about Itula, I'm also a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, and also a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons and Physicians of Glasgow, and possessing 2 master's degrees as well. The knowledge that I have is not so much derived from my dental training other than from my fellowships. And at this stage, it's critically important that when we have this epidemic coming in, that we involve everybody. Because what we've got in common is the enemy, and that is the COVID-19. And what we have as a solution is our strength in unity. And every effort from clinicians, every effort from politicians, from traditional leaders, from religious leaders, from all the village headmen, etc., is going to be critical in convincing our people what is the best approach. From the scientific principles that I know, that what our people are suffering from is sinusitis and sore throat. Those are within the realms of everybody else that understands the principles of pharmacology, the principles of medication. And the reason why I came up with that is a clear understanding of the pathogenesis of the viral infection, the consequences. So no one can claim at the moment that they are treating any COVID-19 at all. No one. Otherwise, there will be a Nobel Prize for that. What people are attempting to do is to alleviate the symptoms and signs of the consequences of infection with the COVID. And that's why I came up with what I put together as 5 medicaments that are commonly available in pharmacies, prescribed by everybody else in the health professions. And that is cephalosporin, which is a 2nd-generation cephalosporin, which is a broad-spectrum antibiotics, which is able to treat antibiotic infections, because we know that the virus is able to denude the epithelial layers in the throat as well, and causes superinfection of bacteria as well, which causes the symptoms that we are treating as well. In addition to that, with the influx of inflammation in the lungs, prednisolone, which is an anti-inflammatory, and also have got pro-inflammatory responses, it's able to subsides the inflammation and subside the influx of fluid in the lungs as well. And patients often recover from that as well. In addition, we've put in aspirin, which is a painkiller, and because one of the basic signs of the symptoms is chills and fever, and aspirin is known to be an antipyretic drug as well, in addition to be a painkiller, in addition to stopping from clotting as well, in what they call antiplatelet properties as well. And then we've got eucalyptus, which allows the mucus to be broken down so that they can flow out and being spit out. At the same time, we've got something called N-acetylcysteine, which is a mucolytic agent, which is breaking up the phlegm that builds up in your throat when you start coughing off. So this combination of things is able to relieve the symptoms. But many of the patients that has been prescribed the remedy, the combination as it were, both in the northern parts of our country, Shakati, Utapi, in Ondangwa, at the coast, there are clinicians prescribing it in Windhoek as well, some specialists in Windhoek as well as prescribing it. They are reporting immediate relief from the symptoms within 5 hours, some people shockingly within 2 to 3 hours as well, and people recover completely from the symptoms. We are not claiming, and no one is claiming to be curing COVID-19, because we are dealing with something that we have got very little knowledge indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Itula. Dr. Ithete, listening to Dr. Itula saying exactly what he's saying now, what is your impression of that? Is there any credibility in what he says is a relief against COVID-19?
Yes, thank you once again. Yes, Dr. Itula has made very good points. The treatment regimen that he pointed out is actually what has been used not only in Namibia but worldwide. And I'm talking about the combinations of an antibiotic with some steroids and aspirin as well. So it is part of the regimen that you see being used widely because of the evidence that is presented to the effect that it does help. But what I also want to perhaps point out is that yes, COVID-19 is a viral disease. We are seeing a lot of changes from what we have been seeing before. If I were just to start from symptoms, for example, earlier in the pandemic in Namibia, the cardinal symptoms initially were those of a flu-like symptoms, cough, fever, muscle pains, loss of taste or loss of smell. But nowadays, what we are seeing now here on the ground is slightly different. People are presenting extremely generalized fatigue or weakness of unexplained origin. There may not be any fever at all. And when we do our, when we assess that patient, you also notice that their oxygen saturations are very low. But there is no cough, no difficulty in breathing. And we are seeing that quite often, especially over the past few weeks. So I also wanted to share that because clinicians sometimes, and I'm glad that Dr. Itola has really been reading about it. This is a dynamic disease. And if you're not careful, sometimes you may actually miss it. There are patients sometimes being turned away that, no, you don't have COVID symptoms because you are not presenting with what we used to be known as COVID symptoms. So I just wanted to highlight that. So it's a dynamic process, it's a dynamic disease. There's a lot of things that are coming in which we did not know before or which we didn't experience earlier in the pandemic. So it is very, very important for clinicians to be always on their toes, read about this evidence coming out from many clinicians who have been treating the disease from all over the world. So yes, this is one of my comments about the treatment regimen, but also for us just to be on alert because things are changing through this pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Ithete. Dr. Itula, amidst all this advice that you're giving, and earlier in the week you shared with me some of the feedback that you've gotten from those who have followed your prescribed concoction. What I haven't picked up in all of this is your own personal general attitude towards vaccine against COVID-19, especially those that are being rolled out right now in Namibia. Do you believe also in vaccine and as a thing that can run at the same time with what you're suggesting? And in fact, are you vaccinated, Doctor? Dr. Itula, did I lose you there? Okay, so we seem to have lost Dr. Itula due to technical issues, but we will continue the conversation with Dr. Ithete. Dr. Ithete, you sort of acknowledged, not sort of, you actually acknowledged that the concoction, you used a medical term there, which I cannot remember now, of Dr. Itula is actually a correct way in approaching the virus in some ways. But tell me, in a hospital like yours in Ongwediva, do you use similar things? Maybe not exactly that, but I mean, there's no cure. How does your hospital deal with COVID patients?
Yes. Basically, first, obviously, we start with diagnosis first. Those who have symptoms suggestive of COVID. And we categorize patients with mild, moderate, or severe symptoms based on a number of factors. As you are aware, COVID largely affects the lung or the respiratory system, and patients would present with symptoms that are related to that system. I pointed out earlier that yes, we are seeing signs that are different from what they used to be in the beginning of the pandemic. And that's really how we do. We diagnose and we categorize patients according to the severity of the disease. And based on that, if you have mild symptoms, then usually we'll give you supportive treatment. And supportive treatment would include, immune boosters or vitamins, especially vitamin C or D. Would also probably, and treat whatever symptoms that are there. If there's a cough, we treat the cough. And etc. If there's a fever, to try to contain the fever. So we use standard treatment that is widely recommended worldwide. And what you're referring to there, what Dr. Itula had been proposing, is really not any different. It's similar what has been used, is being used worldwide. And it's trying to look at the disease as a holistic, both supportive as well as treatment-wise, to treat whatever underlying pathology that we may pick up. So that's really how we manage the COVID patients on this side. And I think it's standard being done everywhere, including Windhoek. It's not any different from what we are doing.
Thank you, Doctor. I suppose then you are saying while you are doing that, you are also, because I was desperate to know what Dr. Itula's attitude is towards vaccination itself. I'm sure, I mean, at your hospital is actually one of the COVID vaccination points. Last time I checked, is that now to say while we are doing what we are doing right now, that at the same time the rollout for vaccinations must continue?
We need to manage this pandemic holistically. First, we start with prevention, and we're very well aware about, and I think the population knows about the measures that are there to prevent, that is social distancing and making sure that we're wearing our protective gear, which is a mask in the general population, and we wash our hands regularly and sanitize. It's very, very important. So we start with prevention. Then, of course, for those who are diagnosed with the disease or have symptoms related to the disease, we manage that process. Now, the third one would be to try to make sure that we prevent further spread of the disease. And vaccination is one of them. Vaccination is a 100-year process that we already know for many, many years. All of us have been vaccinated to prevent us from getting severe diseases. It does not stop you from getting a disease, but it at least helps you. It gives your body enough ammunition to fight when that disease presents to you. And we are having a vaccination point here at Ongwediva MediPark. Initially, it started very slow, but I think now with what people are seeing, what's happening, and I think are understanding now to be able to read for themselves to say, look, if we don't get vaccinated, then we are not protecting ourselves and we are not protecting others. So I'm one of the proponents that really support vaccination. It's probably one of the best way to ensure that we protect the population in general. At the moment, we do have 2 vaccines that are available, the Sinopharm and the AstraZeneca. And they've been available ever since they were rolled out to the northern part of Namibia, and we are anticipating to receive more. There have been talks that government has already secured further vaccines to be rolled out soon within this month. So we are really looking forward to that. I think if we had received and if we had embraced vaccines earlier, maybe we wouldn't have been experiencing the type of the way we are experiencing now in terms of the wave that we are currently in.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell us, Dr. Ithete, as far as the issue of availability of vaccine doses themselves is concerned? We are hearing, one day you hear the country has run out of vaccines, one day you hear, the next day you hear someone has just gotten vaccinated. What can you tell us about the situation at your hospital?
Yeah, you see, all vaccines are governed through the Ministry of Health and Social Services. We are all aware that vaccines, when they came into the country, there was a limited number of vaccines, over 100 to some 1,000 doses. So that would have obviously not covered all people who need to be vaccinated. And I'm talking about now. So yes, there have been challenges. Despite those challenges, I think there was a general low acceptance of vaccinations or hesitance, let me put it that way, of vaccinations at the beginning. And that, I think, really probably cost us a lot. Because you must also remember that this disease or this pandemic is coming in waves. We had the first wave, then we had a second wave, and now we are currently what we are calling a third wave. And these waves are generally described based on the variants of the disease, of the virus that is coming through. Now, if I'm just arguing for the sake of it, that if we had received these vaccines, or if many people would have been vaccinated earlier, probably we would not have seen what we are seeing now, our ICUs and high cares full, because we would have more people that vaccinated. Yes, I do understand that the number of vaccines were limited, but at the same time, I think there was quite a general hesitancy in terms of going to get vaccinated at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Now, the availability of vaccines varies from different regions. And the approach has also been a little bit different. At one point, I think some regions had put up notices that no more new people coming in, no more new vaccine, no first dose patients or people should come in. We should only just complete those who have received their first dose already, so that at least they ensure that those who have received their first dose can get their second dose. But I think the thinking is changing a bit, because I've seen now what has been proposed is that let everybody get at least some sort of protection. Now, because even a first dose is giving you some sort of protection against the virus. So I think generally right now, realizing that yes, we are running short of supply, but at least let's get as many people immunized as possible, even if it's just for the first dose.
Indeed. Um, and at your particular hospital, Dr. Ithete, also, I mean, one of the current challenges, and you alluded to it slightly in your last contribution, is the state of hospitals in terms of capacity. What is the situation at your hospital?
Yes, I think none of us had anticipated this type of disease burden, what we are experiencing now. So, and I'm not talking about only Namibia, I could probably say the same word. Now, in the northern part, here at Ongwediva MediPark, we work in conjunction with Oceana Health Directorate. We have a task force there that coordinates activities related to pandemic. So we really work as a team. Now, as far as the hospital is concerned, we do have 3 different departments that look after COVID patients, and that is the where is patients under investigations. Those that we feel that they have moderate symptoms and are requiring admission, but have not been tested yet, or we just tested them, but we don't have the results, conclude that they really are suffering from COVID infection. And then we have what is called the COVID Isolation Center, which is now those who have been confirmed and who are still moderate or severely ill, and some of them may require, for example, respiratory support or ventilatory support in form of CPAP or ventilation. And that's a different ward. Now, what we are also seeing is that we have patients who have stayed a long period within these wards, perhaps been cleared already of the virus, but are suffering now of sequelae of the disease, having severe respiratory problems as a result of a severe infection of the lung. And those still requiring hospitalization. Yes, they may have been cleared of the acute infection, but are still requiring hospitalization. And those are now having a high care unit where they have to be there, because unfortunately they are still oxygen dependent and cannot be sent home. That's really how we have categorized our hospital in terms of the pandemic is concerned.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. And one of the miracles, maybe it's not even a miracle. Of course, you are a veteran medical man, but one of the things that surprised a lot of people, including myself, is the rate at which the founding president recovered from COVID-19. You are his personal physician, if I'm not mistaken. And it happened, of course, much earlier before all these variants came. But what can you tell us about, I'm sure, I mean, as much as it's a private matter, I'm sure for a statesman like himself, there are parameters within which you can still tell us how he recovered from the virus, what kind of remedies, what kind of precautions he took while he was sick. What can you tell us about that, Doctor, if you may?
Yeah, perhaps I could just speak broadly. The founding president is a very healthy man, and he has really lived a healthy lifestyle all his life. So I think that helps a lot in terms of recovery. But generally, let me just speak broadly in terms of managing of COVID patients. That you need to start early in terms of managing them, and don't wait until the infections have set and become very severe. That is really one of the hallmarks that it helps people to recover faster if you engage them faster. Unfortunately, there's still a tendency among patients that you don't seek treatment early. Now, when the interventions are done, in most instances, it will be late, and you would have severe infection that may have required you to be even ventilated, and that, unfortunately, is a very difficult curve to turn. So I always encourage people that as soon as you pick up something that is not what you have been, as soon as you are, for example, excessively tired for unspecified reasons, if you have a fever, if you have body pains that you cannot really explain, amidst this, think about COVID. And try to seek intervention early. And that is, I think, the hallmark of the treatment. And those patients who do well are those who really get managed early in the disease. Now, the ones who don't do well, unfortunately, you would hear when you go into their histories, or history of how they got ill, they'll tell you that, no, I've been for about a week or so not feeling well. I took this remedy at home. I did this other one as well, and not really aggressive. And unfortunately, this you cannot manage COVID-19 like that. It's a virus that replicates and replicates fast. And before you know it, you would have really engulfed especially the respiratory system, and compromise your oxygen supply to your whole body. And it's very difficult to recover. And I'm sure that it'll be also good to have some of the patients who have had severe COVID. They will tell you, how terrific it is, how severe and how helpless they felt when you can't breathe, and for a long period of time. So that's really what I would advise. And I said this basing on your initial question about how did the founding president recover so fast, and it really depends on your general health and how you approach the management of the disease.
Indeed. Speaking of your hospital again, and I don't want to make the whole conversation about your hospital, but it is worth mentioning, Dr. Ithete, that the former President Pohamba and his wife Penehupifo were also, if I'm not mistaken, at your hospital recently to receive their jabs. Just from a leadership and inspirational point of view, how important is it that you have people like the former president publicly showing up and taking their jabs? What kind of message does it send, especially to the doubting Thomases who are out there saying, if the president is not going, if Dr. Ithete is not going, I'm also not going. What kind of difference can something like that make?
It does have a huge impact, especially for all public figures, because generally the public look at them as leaders, as our leaders. And we also welcomed it when both the founding president first came in for his COVID vaccine, and then subsequently came in for his second COVID vaccine. Our former president and former first lady, when they came, and I specifically asked them that it would be good for the population or people to see that you have the confidence on this vaccine, and you trust and believe the opinions and the advice of the medical people that are giving you on this particular vaccine. So it has a huge impact. It's not only a show, but I think it has a huge impact for people when they see their leaders getting vaccinated. And especially now that there is all this and all this hesitancy that is going on about the vaccine. So it is very, very, very important at this time to see that type of leadership, and for them to come forth asking questions about the vaccine, how it works, what are the side effects, and then deciding on that to get vaccinated. It's very, very important. And you see that it's being used worldwide as well, where people are going. And it's not only, and when I talk about public figures, I'm talking about other public figures. I mean, even Jabela is a public figure. If people see you getting vaccinated, I'm sure you will have a lot of other people that you can draw from, either people that you grow up with in your place, or your friends who may have been hesitant to go and get vaccinated. Popular figures such as the musicians, the sports celebrities. It's very, very important because they do have a crowd that follows them, and that crowd once they see them getting vaccinated, I think it means a lot to them. So it does have an effect on the population, especially during this time when there's so much material being written against the vaccine and the fears about the vaccine. But if you look at it now, and I'm saying this to what you refer to as the doubting Thomases, if you look at the world, many people have been vaccinated throughout the world. It's over 2 billion people now that have been vaccinated. You are seeing countries and towns and cities that are opening up, and largely, okay, it's not singularly due to the vaccine. There are others, also the effects of the lockdowns, as well as vaccine. Now, vaccine, what it does is that you will see less people dying, less people ended up in ICUs and actually dying. So, and this is really a testimony that I think we follow what is there, and there's evidence to prove that it works. If not, we're going to find ourselves 2022 or 2023 still really sitting in very low vaccination figures in our country. And this is why I always plead to the general population that look around you, and not only in your village, look around the world, what's happening. And for you to see the evidence that points towards how effective these vaccines are in curbing the tide of this pandemic.
Indeed. The final question to you, Dr. Ithete, is you are a medical doctor yourself, but you're also a leader in the sense of you are a business leader, and you are a very revered character within your community. What is it that will get our country back on track as far as COVID-19 is concerned, in your view?
In my view, is that we need to have an acceptance of this and the severity of the pandemic. We are losing loved ones, we are losing community leaders to this pandemic. It's about time that we first find ourselves to accept that this pandemic is here. Now with that, we need to now unite around to fight against this common enemy. Namibians are generally resilient people, and once they lobby themselves against something, they really would achieve good things. So I have that belief. So it's the same that I would really want to appeal to the Namibians to really rally against all these efforts that are being done with one sole purpose, is really to save Namibians. So we need to unite, and it's good to see people from various sectors coming to the fore, both public and private sector, religious leaders, traditional leaders. It's very, very important. We need to unite in this fight. And I think ultimately we will win, but it really requires all of us. We start from individuals to groups to communities, to political parties, church groups, etc. We really need to do that. And we need to listen to the voice of reasons. And what I'm talking about is that unfortunately, there's a lot of things being talked about the pandemic. Why? Perhaps because of the way it came. It came so unprecedented. We did not expect it. It's only 2.5 or barely 2 years. So mixed, and I'm talking about worldwide. So many people probably would not expect this. So something that came so fast, we are still in that shock that we were not expecting something like this. But at the same time, let's accept it. It's here. And it's here with us. It's taking a toll on our families and our communities. We must now take all the weapons available to fight it. The protocols we already have, and I think most people are really adhering to many of them. When I'm talking about social distancing and washing your hands, wearing masks, sanitize, Those are things. But we still have one element, and those are things that we still need to find. That we're still finding large gatherings which are becoming sources of infection. For example, our culture, prevents us from, when somebody dies, it's cultural to go and visit the family. Chiwambo we call it Chitondokera. Unfortunately, those are very risky at this point in time. And we need to accept that, both sides, those who have lost loved ones, to realize that perhaps you may not see people, but it's simply not because they don't love you or they don't concern about your grief. It's simply because we need to try to prevent further spread of this disease. So it is really an effort from all of us, and I'm glad that media is doing its part, because that's really the way to put the message across out there that this pandemic is real and we need to be very aggressive in managing this aggressive pandemic.
Dr. Tshali, Ithete, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your very revolutionary input, if I can call it that way, but also for holding the fort after we lost Dr. Itula in the stream earlier on. You have been a very capable guest tonight, and we appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamola, and thank you for having this platform for us to share with the rest of the nation.
Thank you, Doctor.